We're back, people. What is up? How y'all doing? Another stream today, going over Miami Dolphins 2026 NFL Draft. Ask me any questions. Going to be sort of just a chill vibe. So we'll wait for some people to get in here before we start talking about stuff. But yeah, appreciate you guys. Hanging out, watching stuff. If there's anything I've learned is I got to stop. I realize every time, I know I'm going to make a post on Twitter that's going to get a bunch of comments. I just realized don't do it. It's not worth it. Because I pretty sure I made one post about Malik Willis and it got 53 comments and it was just all saying the exact same thing. Good times, good times. And that always happens. That's why I'm not as active on Twitter. Getting close to, I believe the combine. Let me look it up actually. 2026 combine, I think, is coming around. It's just right around the corner. So we'll have some more new draft content. Yeah, it starts the 26th. So that will be cool. Today's the 22nd. So we're a few days away from the combine happening. We're gonna be in flow here pretty soon. So combine in a week, you learn some things from the combine. People I take all combine stuff with a little bit of a grain of salt, but you can still learn about potential new players. You can, maybe be like, oh, you know what? I didn't see that type of athleticism on the film. Maybe let's go back and watch. It can hurt people's stocks and hurt player stocks. There's also context. Last year with Gunnar Helm, he had a really slow 40, but it ended up being that he had a really rolled his ankle really badly, so that kind of affects that. So you have to understand the context of the situation sometimes. But once the combine's done, within a week after the combine, then free agency starts. So we're kicking into things happening here. Don't expect Miami to be super heavily involved in free agency like we've talked about, but they're still at least gonna have add some people. But I should imagine it's gonna be a lot of vet minimum guys. Also looking forward to see if they re-sign players, which I think is probably the biggest thing at this point. And then the draft will be huge, 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 huge. Honestly, I think we'll set the kind of how we feel about this regime is what happens during the draft. Because people are going to still, even though we know, there's still going to be fans, during free agency, be do something, even though, I feel everyone knows, hey, it's probably not going to be heavily involved ever. That's just going to be their way. They'll maybe one guy that's, an actual, bigger signing, but that's about it per season. And then in this offseason, pretty unlikely unless it's Willis, like we've talked about, but that's the only one that I could really even see. And I still don't even think that's going to happen. But the draft will kind of be the first sort of feel I think we get for this new regime, what they're going to do. And will honestly make me, especially Sully, will make me, it's probably going to give me that first, just that first impression of Sully is going to be very huge based off that draft and whether I'll feel pretty good about him or not. Because I feel good about him as of right now, where he's coming from. I like his philosophies, but we still have never seen him actually be in charge of a draft. So that would be very interesting to see. So here, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, leave any comments, any questions. I'll answer some stuff. I appreciate that I own you. Favorite football analysis. Don't think I've streamed in a bit. I can't remember the last time I streamed. I did recently get I got a remote scout job, which is cool. I'm doing some remote scouting for Tennessee Tech. I've started doing that. I'm watching tight ends for them, which is cool. So that's awesome. I've never done actual scouting for a team before. So that's in the FCS, so that'll be fun. I actually do want to kind of bring this up because I know, lots of Miami fans, Hurricane fans, and I did see this tweet about Aake Mesador, and this has kind of been a reason. I think Aake Mesador's film is good, but he would be a huge outlier. And I do agree. I do believe in the concept of hey, taking outliers from time to time. but he would be a huge outlier in terms of like age, drafted at round 1 specifically. Like I am fine taking him a little bit later, but he'd be the first like D line or DN draft. He would be the first DN drafted that's age 25 or older in the first round since 1948. If you did go in the first round, and then also just being good at that age too is a pretty big outlier. Like guys that went in round 1 or 2 that were above the age of 24. Out of all that, only like 3 Pro Bowl seasons, and most of them were bust. A couple of them turned out to be pretty good. And then some other names. Most of them didn't turn out great, but yeah, it would be a pretty big outlier. I do like his film. I think he's going to be a solid player in the NFL. It's just I think with the trajectory the Dolphins are on, it doesn't make sense to take him where he's probably going to go. That's why I'm like not super like we compare like some of these DNs, and like I'm also not super high on Keldrick Falk, right? Keldrick Falk, when his rookie contract is up, will be the age Mesador is right now. Like that's insane. Like, is that not crazy? Right. Hey, Ryder. Somehow Ty Simpson had a fantastic combine. How would you feel about the Dolphins reaching for him at pick 11/first round? I wouldn't love it. It wouldn't surprise me if Ty Simpson rises just because of the nature of the QB class. I do think he is QB2, but I would feel like it's a very risky. They would have to have more information than me because I would have to know why his play fell off. If they believe his play fell off because there was some injuries, stuff, because like I do believe like his early season film, like whatever games 1 through 7 or whatever it ended up being in college football, was first round type of player. But like the fall off after that was like, it wasn't like he fell off to like second or third round type of player. It was like really bad for the most part. Like there were some good moments, but there'd have to be some like justifiable reason that they found behind the scenes, that information that I'm just not capable of getting, for them to feel like actually good about taking him that early. Personally, are there any late round prospects at corner or safety? I don't know about like late. I haven't done like enough research maybe to know, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys, test pretty well. I'm interested to see how a couple sub guys test. I want to see how Emmanuel McNeil-Warren test. Obviously, he's an earlier round guy. Brandon Sisse from South Carolina. I'm interested to see how he tests. Then there's some mid-round safeties like Jalen Husky. I want to see how he tests. The USC kids. Bud Clark, he's a bit of an older safety. It'll be interesting to see how he tests. Jacoby Thomas from Miami will be interesting. I'm not sure if any of these guys will rise up. I mean, I'm sure some. I think testing will be important for them. And then maybe some of the bigger corners will be interesting to see how they potentially test. I'm staying away. I think it's fine to definitely not be in on Ty Simpson, but I don't believe in not taking a player because the last player that played that position didn't work out. Scout the player, not the helmet. Big philosophy for me, and pretty much everyone. Ty Simpson should have done another year in college. It probably would have helped him, but also I actually understood why he did come out just because of this class. And if he did stay another year, he would have been an older-ish prospect. I do understand why he did end up coming out just based from this class, but it would have been nice for him to get more experience in college because he didn't have that many starting game experience-wise. But yeah, there's just like with all the rule, like with people transferring, and then like there's so many older prospect now in draft classes than there used to be. Damani Jackson from Bama, yeah, he'll probably test pretty well. Would be interesting to see. Where do I have his name on this list? I don't think I loved. I don't have his name written down. I definitely remember watching him. I don't remember loving his film, but I do remember thinking he would test pretty well. I think I'm looking forward to seeing some receivers as well at those. I like watching receivers do drills at the combine. I think that's when you get a pretty good feel. I remember even at the Senior Bowl, the one Senior Bowl I went to, I remember just watching receivers do drills, and it was literally just the most basic drill. It was like a box drill where you just literally are just making like 90-degree cuts and running in a square, and then you catch the ball at the end. And everyone's just 90 degrees, 90 degrees. And then Amarius Mims, if you remember Amarius Mims coming out of Baylor, he would not run the drill correctly. His last angle, he would be at like 45. Like I wouldn't understand it. Like the cones are clearly in a box, and he would be at a 45, would never break horizontally. And I'm not kidding. That made me be like, okay, I don't like him as a prospect. And then he did end up not being a good prospect. I mean, I didn't really like his film that much either. But I remember being like, that being such a turn away. Like, you can't run this most basic drill, these details. Like, that's insane to me. I do like the receiver class. I have not watched Charles Demings. I don't think I have any Stephen F. Austin film. Do you think staying put at 11, drafting higher end talent would be more impactful on the roster rather than supporting mid round picks and hoping to hit on a couple? Staying put. Personally, I believe like unless one of my guys falls to 11, like if I did trade back, I do think in most scenarios I could get someone just as good at 18 as I could get at 11. And if you do look, I believe Dundee did send me an interesting article about like the different like percentage of hits at like pick 11 in comparison to later picks. And or like pick 21 to compared to pick 11, like the hit odds were like barely any different. It was like a 2% difference. So I don't know. I think the Dolphins need as many. Like I think the Dolphins are in a position where they need a lot of picks because of what happened in 2022 and 2023. You only had 4 picks and it hurt the roster, and you also didn't have any high picks either. So like yes, Dolphins should take some high picks, but I don't mind hoarding up on as many middle round picks either. And if I only have to move back like a handful of spots. Did you get a chance to watch more Jalen Farmer film? I have watched more Jalen Farmer. I think he's like a solid middle round guard. Still, I don't think my opinions changed too much on him. Like I don't think I'm as high on him as maybe some other of the people that I've seen. There's a few like Dolphins players that really really like him, and then there's some that I think don't like him at all. I'm probably more middle-ish ground. Like I think he can be a more of a early on depth guy in his career that could develop into like a solid starter, sort of. And you get that in like the 4th round, like that's pretty normal. Hey, Ryder, can you explain what the difference is between a 1 gap versus 2 gap scheme? Yes. There's also like 1.5 gap, which is kind of basically 2 gapping, but I would say the main difference when it comes to like 1 gapping and 2 gapping is in 1 gap, you are only responsible for 1 gap, like a defensive lineman will be responsible for 1 gap. So it allows them to play with more penetration, disruptiveness. It's where you value guys who are more disruptive and have more vertical speed, initial quickness upfield, while 2 gappers are more like Jordan Phillips, who's on the Dolphins right now. Jordan Phillips, rookie, he's like the ideal 2 gapper, a guy who can hold his own at the point of attack, is in charge of 2 gaps or 1.5 gap, which would be you have your primary gap and then your secondary gap. So you're more of a control player. So a guy who can stack and then shed and maybe take on double teams, that sort of thing. It's more of a control, read, and react type of thing, where 1 gap is more get a field, create disruption. Well, I think that guys on Miami, like Jordan Phillips, is a 2 gapper. Kenneth Grant, I actually think is it better as a 1 gapper. He showed a lot of improvement as a 2 gapper as a rookie, but I think he's better as a 1 gapper. Sealer, I think, is pretty even at both, but I think he obviously looks better as a 1 gapper because it's just the more natural, disruptive playmaking thing. Zeke Biggers is definitely a 1 gapper in my opinion. He's more of a disruptive 1 gapper than a 2 gapper. He plays too high and can struggle versus double teams as a two-gapper type of guy. He has the length to two-gap, but he still needs to work on his technique as a two-gapper. That's sort of like the main difference. Watched YouTube films of Garrett Nussmeier and Taylor Green. Green was more impressive in arm strength and ability to run. Oh yeah, Taylor Green's a freak, but he's also not very good at like what you need a QB to be good at. You know. I have questions about Nussmeier too. He also suffered from some injuries. I think Nussmeier is a higher floor as like a backup, while Taylor Green has like a higher ceiling for sure. But I don't even know if Green would even ever develop into a decent backup because he struggles with accuracy and decision making, which is you need to have a baseline of that, you know. I heard that Cam Wolf has reported that Waddle Nation were considered as foundational pieces by the new Dolphins regime, led by Solane Hafley, untouchable of sorts. Yes, I did read that as well. I couldn't remember who posted that, but I did see that on Twitter the other day. But yeah, I think that's not super surprising. I actually think like there's a couple guys. I think I saw some other people even say like Waddle and Sealer. Just because if you trade Waddle and Sealer, you lose like a decent chunk of cap space, which the Dolphins are not in a position to really do that this year. That's something you could do next year, but they're not really in position to do that. I would be surprised if those guys got traded. It would really have to blow you out of the water. And same with Achane. I've even seen people mention Brewer because like the Chargers could be interested in Brewer. But yeah, I just don't personally see that. Didn't McDaniel only have like one first round pick during his tenure? He had two. Yeah, the last two. He didn't have his first two seasons. He had no first round picks. Which is kind of crazy. And every first pick, this is why like people think like, oh, we took in Hafley, we're gonna take defense for sure. Which to me, I don't think it leads to that like for sure. Because if you look at the McDaniel era, every first pick in the McDaniel era was a defensive player. I believe so. It was like what Tyndall, Cam Smith. Was Tyndall his first year? Was that 2022? Cam Smith was one though, but then there was Chop, and then there was Kenneth Grant. So I don't think it necessarily means like I do think defense is still more likely just because if you look at what players will be there, I think defense makes a lot of sense for Miami in a lot of situations. But yeah, I went to high school with Andrew Meyer, so we trade her and Brewer, give him a chance. Yeah, I would only trade Brewer if you got like a crazy high pick though, and I don't think teams are going to offer anything crazy. I would keep Brewer because he's still pretty young, and you have the ability to extend him, and you don't have that many other players you need to extend. Like you'll be fine, like extending him for sure. Because you don't really need to have that money until like 2027, and you have a lot of money in 2027 to work with. So, and I wouldn't mind like Andrew Meyer. You know what he could be? Like I actually think what Andrew Meyer could be this year is he could be the backup center, but I wonder if he'll take the Daniel Brunskill role and he play him as like the 6-0 lineman. I think Meyer has the athleticism to do that. I actually think it would be fun. As much as I like her, he doesn't fit the scheme and the type of offensive line. It seems like Sullivan likes Aaron is way too small. I do know they want bigger alignment, but Bobby Slowick is going to run the exact same scheme. So I think it would be a mistake to bring in a bigger center if they're going to be running the exact same scheme because I don't think there's a better scheme fit than Brewer. Like I know the Packers, I wonder if Sully will realize maybe the Packers' mistakes because the Packers got bigger at O-line, but they got worse. Like you don't need to just get bigger. Like if you get big guys that are good, that's great. Like get some big guys that can move and are good. That's the ideal situation. But I think getting bigger just to get bigger is not something you need. Like your two best O linemen right now are one guy who's huge and then one guy who's very tiny, but they're both quite good. So I'm hoping they just are going for good players. It can be a mixed match. How does Cole Payton compare to Green? He's also kind of a developmental guy. I would say he's further along though than Green. Green has like more freakish athleticism and like maybe arm strength, but Cole Payton also has like good size, good physical traits. But he did show like I've seen some pieces where people are calling Cole Payton QB2. They think he's going to go second round. That's rich for me. That's pretty rich. Like I think he's a day 3 guy still, like round 4, round 5. He's not like a bad dart throw in this class, but like as I've said, most QBs in this class don't care for him. That's like I'm in the boat where if you don't, I think Malik Willis, free agency wise, is the only one that is intriguing. The rest of the guys, like people say we're gonna go after like Jimmy Garoppolo or Kirk Cousins. Like to me, just feels like a waste of money and a waste of time to have them play at all. Everyone that plays quarterback this season for Miami is someone that you believe has a future with this team. Or has a chance to have a future with this team. So Quinn Ewers, if you don't sign Malik, Quinn Ewers should end up being the starter, or someone that you draft in day 3, when they should battle for the starter, or you trade for a guy like Will Levis, someone that has some sort of future potential. Like you should be trying to develop these young guys. Like I don't need to see Garoppolo or Kirk Cousins ever play snaps for Miami Dolphins. It doesn't do anything for this team next year, in my opinion. For some possible D tackle selection for the Dolphins in the draft, we are not going to keep Steeler forever. And who would be your favorite? I actually do like some. There. I don't think D tackle is a huge need, but I do think there's some like day 3 guys that would be fun players. I think Landon Robinson out of Navy is really fun. He's a smaller guy, but man, his film is fun and he holds his own at the point of attack. Grayson Halden is someone I could feel they really like out of Oklahoma. Penetrating type, has some really good movement skills. I think he has a really nice combination of like natural low center of gravity because he's shorter, but he has good explosiveness and length. So he's like a really good combo of like explosiveness, play strength, length. Zane Durant out of Penn State, he's another penetrating type that I think you can get on day 3. There's some fun day 3 options at D tackle where I think that becomes more realistic. I think D tackle is one of those positions I'm not expecting in the first 2 rounds. Round 3, you have 3 picks. I think a lot of positions are on the table at that point. The quarterback like Sawyer Robinson from Baylor, is he going to be one of those guys that performs well at the combine? Is more of a tape evaluation of quarterback? I could see him having a good combine. I don't know if he'll like blow away the combine though. Like I think Robertson's film is weird. He is one of the better-ish quarterbacks of the class, but I'm not a huge fan of him either. I think he's a decent athlete. He's got good size. I don't think his arm is all that special. Like I don't think he has great arm strength for a guy of his size. Like I thought his arm would be like stronger for that type of player. His accuracy, he has some accuracy issues as well. Can just be pretty inconsistent. Like there will be times he flashes, but then he'll have games where like, oh, you'll just look like a different player. So I guess it just depends what type of Sawyer Robertson shows up at those drills. But mid round, maybe you throw a dart at him. If you get offered a pick in the 45 to 60 range for Aaron Brewer, what are you saying? Oof. I'd have to. That would be 45 to 60. I would probably say no. And I love picks. And I would say, and I love having some big picks. And I think in a situation where, like, if the Dolphins were, like, had a lot of people they needed to pay next year, and Brewer is not one they could have paid, then I would probably take that. But I think Brewer can pretty easily be paid and kept around. But yeah. What would Levis cost to acquire? I think if Will Levis is like a day 3 pick, I would trade for that all day long. Not saying it would work out, but like that's one of the more intriguing options to me. Because I actually think he has some like physical talent and has shown some signs of life. We even saw it against Miami in that comeback. Like he made, certain guys in the Miami secondary look horrible. And he also has like didn't have too many great opportunities. I also think the Tennessee's coaching staff was horrible. So, and we've seen a Green Bay staff develop a Tennessee bus before in Malik Willis. So I wouldn't mind Will Levis dart throw for a day 3 pick. Like, I would probably prefer that over pretty much every quarterback in the draft. Haynes King in the 7th, trust future franchise right there. If you mean like future Taysom Hill, then yeah, I could agree. Center like a lot in this draft. What are your thoughts on him? Honestly, I have not watched like any centers because I don't expect the Dolphins to go after any centers because of Brewer and Meyer. Like, center is one of those positions like I think they're fine at. I've seen some centers just because I was watching other guys or from the Senior Bowl. I watched Sam Hecht from Kansas State. He's actually pretty good. He's probably the most Brewer-like guy of the class, at least that I've seen. But I haven't watched much centers. Can you also blame that on the schemer at Baylor? I mean, potentially, but it's hard to blame like accuracy and consistencies on like a scheme thing, you know? Yeah, I wasn't a huge Lawson fan when I watched him. York is definitely a smarter player. I wonder how the NFL will value him just because he is very, like, he is definitely on the smaller side. There are some smaller linebackers in his class. But I do like York, but he is more of like a middle round-ish guy. Where do you see D'Angelo Pons being drafted, and what role do you think he works best in the NFL? I think Pons goes in day 2 somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes round 2 at all. I think he's that good. And I actually do think, I think a lot of people will see his size and think he's a better nickel. I would play him on the outside in like a quarter scheme, like what Darius Williams has done for the Rams. Very similar sizes. I actually think he's a better fit on the outside. El Nota Levis, the dude is the worst QB in the NFL, arguably. I don't agree with that. There's so many bad QBs. Like, worst QB in the NFL? Like, counting non-starters? No. Like, arguably, Will Levis would be like probably QB 2 or 3 in this draft class. And I wasn't a huge Will Levis fan coming out of college, but I do think there's some actual developmental traits there to work with. And I thought he played better at Tennessee than I would have expected because I was not a fan of him coming out of Kentucky. But like, I actually think he's shown a little bit more than I would expect out of pretty much anyone in this draft class. Lander Barton. I actually watched a lot of Lander Barton last year because I thought he was going to be in last year's draft class, and I was not a huge fan. I thought he was being like over projected. I have not watched his film this year, so I don't know if he improved or not. In your player draft review where you show film on them, can you give a prediction on what pick range they'll be taking in so we can have an idea? That's what's realistically available. Yeah, I can do that. I think I usually do say a range. I don't know if I give like I usually give like I give a range of like what I think the NFL will think, but I also give like what I would think for the most part. But I can make it more, I guess, obvious in the beginning. The Dolphins traded on 11. What team and draft position would you target? I mean, I would have to look at other teams' draft picks and what they could offer, but I don't think you need to trade down like crazy far. Like, I wouldn't trade down past like. I would probably still stay in the later teens if I had to. But I think I'm just not sure what other draft picks teams have to offer in those areas. But I think if you stay in like the later teens, maybe pick 20, you still are probably able to get a guy that I like. Is Kyle appropriate to be taken at age 7? My guess is he goes a little bit later than that. Just basing on what I think the NFL likes. Just my guess, though. Based on the 2024 tape that you saw? Yeah, I mean, I didn't see anything super special with Barton in terms of like athleticism, his build, his instincts. I don't know. I guess he would be. Yeah, I could see him fitting as a special teams guy. How many CBs do you think the Dolphins will select in the draft, and who would be your top choices? Same thing for Dan. I mean, it depends how many. If they're able to add more picks, I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing they're going to take at least one. But I don't know. I could see them taking two, maybe a combination of like a guy who can play inside outside. If they're going first round, really the only choices are McCoy and Delane, in my opinion. Second round would be guys like Chris Johnson, maybe D'Angelo Pons, Brandon Cisse, Julian Neal, maybe Colton Hood if he was there, but he's probably gonna go in the first round. Round 3 would be guys like maybe Keith Abney, Chandler Rivers, Igbinosun, Devin Moore out of Florida, maybe. And then if they go like a nickel corner, like a Traden Stoops from Arizona. Am I missing someone here? Yeah. D end, I think they'll take at least one. If they add more picks, I could easily see them taking two. Even if they didn't add more picks, I could see them taking two. I think first round, probably the only first round D end I would take is Ruben Bain Jr. at 11. Then some later guys, or like round 2 or later. I like R. Mason Thomas, Danny Dennis Sutton, Zion Young, Derek Moore in round 3, round 4, Gabe Akis from Illinois, Malachi Lawrence, maybe Anthony Lucas. Okay. What players? Hold on, let me get water. What players do you see falling in the draft, and who do you think will be a later round steal due to lacking physical attributes? Well, it would probably be the guys. The guys that will fall will be the guys lacking physical attributes. It will be I think Chandler Rivers out of Duke. I could see him fall into like that round 4 range. I would take that all day long. Who else kind of fits that sort of? Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech definitely could fall. York out of Texas A&M as well. He's another guy that kind of fits that sort of smaller, undersized that could fall. Kyle Lewis, the guy that we just talked about out of Pitt, he's another guy that kind of falls into that category. Trying to see if there's anyone that I'm missing. Probably some receivers too. There's some small receivers I could see falling that I think will be like solid NFL players. Like Lewis Bond out of Boston College. He also, I think, played under Halfley at some point, so there's that kind of combo. And he's not like super small either. Like he's smaller-ish, but what linebackers in the draft would you like that fit with Jordan Brooks? I'm probably looking for green dot guys. So Sonny Styles. I think CJ Allen might actually be a decent fit. Better than Anthony Hill Jr. Jake Galladay would be interesting, but I don't know if he's the greatest fit with Brooks. But it would be interesting. Kendall Daniels out of Oklahoma. Josiah Trotter from Missouri. Steelers. I mean, I can look what the Steelers have. I mean, I don't know if they actually would want Simpson, but maybe. Let's see what picks they have. They have pick 53, pick 76, pick 85. I think going back to 21, and if they are trading up for it, QB. Okay, you know what you can look at? Justin Fields. Because Justin Fields was a similar trade area, I believe. In draft, because they traded the team that traded back. They were in the similar range. Yeah, Bears drafted Justin Fields at number 11, trading up with the Giants. They went from 20 to 11, so this is a very similar range. And they got Chicago got number 20. Or no, Chicago sent 20 in a 5th rounder this year, and then they gave up a future first and a future 4th. I don't think the Dolphins will get a future first necessarily in this class. I guess that's possible, but if you can get a future first, I would take that. But I would probably look for pick 53, like look for a 2nd rounder, and then maybe a later round pick, like a 5th rounder, or maybe you swap later round picks, something like that. I think that would make sense. Is the best guard in this draft an OT that's going to be kicked inside? If so, who? I would say no. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Maui Noah ended up being the best guard in the class, but I do actually think he can play some tackle. I think Dunker is definitely a guard, but I don't think he's the best guard in the class. Like, I think the guard class is pretty good. Like, I think Ioane is a very safe prospect. Like, I think Basantis from Texas A&M is pretty good. I think Oregon Kid's pretty good. My guess is the guards are probably going to be the best guards in the class, if I had to guess. Am I being harsh when I say I believe McCoy and the corner from LSU minus spin are slot corners in the NFL? I don't think McCoy is a slot corner at all. I think Delane could play slot and actually be a really good slot. But I think he can definitely play on the outside. I don't know. I don't think they're too small personally. McCoy's actually got pretty good size from my understanding. Like he's pretty well built. Like he's 6 foot 195. Like Monsieur Delane, I think, is a little more the lanky type, but I don't know. I don't think if you look at the NFL, most of the Delane's around the same size. So yeah, it's not really that much of a difference. But if you look at the NFL, most of the best receivers in the NFL are not super big. There's some obvious big ones, but I don't know. And there's a lot of great corners that are their size. Like a lot of great corners are in that 6 foot, 190, 200 range. So I think they'll be fine. I think you're actually seeing a lot of more bigger nickels now than in the past. As long as you're not just like super tiny on the outside, I don't have any problem with them playing on the outside. There's a few people saying that Ruben Bain is going to fall out of the top 15 because of lack of physical attributes. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he fell out of it. I also don't think he's an elite talent. I want to say I think he's a pretty like I think Ruben Bain's going to be pretty good in the NFL. I think in a lot of draft classes he would go outside of the top 10. This class he'll probably go top 10, but I actually think in a lot of classes he would go outside of it. But I don't know. I talked about Taylor Green and Nussmeier earlier. I think Nussmeier is the highest floor of those guys. Like I could see Nussmeier being like a decent career backup in the right system, but I don't think he has a super high ceiling. I think Aller and Taylor Green are like the dart throw upside guys that you hope develop into something, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were out of the NFL in like 3 years either. Like that's probably the most likely outcome is they don't make much of an impact even as a backup. But I haven't watched him, Scotty. Okay. I wanted to read something here. No. Still so many players to watch, you know? So many players to get through. Trying to see if anything's happened. Because we're getting. You guys see the argument on Twitter yesterday? People talking about like linemen and stuff. I can't believe some of the takes I see on Twitter sometimes. Some of the responses I got to that Malik Willis tweet, I'm like, they didn't even make sense. Like, I understand not wanting Malik Willis, but like, at least just say you don't like him. You don't have to make up all these reasons. Just say you don't think he's good. Anthony, I would say Spencer as well has more likelihood of sticking at guard. When you're watching film on D tackles and pass steps, what are you looking for, especially if the QB is in shotgun and takes a very quick drop and has the ball out quick? How are you analyzing it? Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, it's all about process over results. So I don't necessarily like. You're looking at what they're asked to do. If they are asked to like fly off the ball, and they're also in a situation where like this is a true one-on-one pass rush situation, like that's where you can evaluate. There's sometimes they're working a stunt. Sometimes ball is out so fast they never even really got engaged, so you don't even get anything out of those plays. Those are just neutral plays. You kind of just like you don't even consider them really. But then there are plays where like you can still see that first step explosiveness, which you're evaluating. See that first step explosiveness on those plays? That's huge. You can see the pop in their hands. You can see their plan if they're clearly having a plan to go out there. Their mix up of like pace, their tempo. They can still, end up winning a rep. Like, oh, they would have won that rep. They won their one-on-one rep. They didn't end up getting a pressure or anything because ball was out so fast, or they didn't get a sack. But like, I'm not going to knock them for that. That's just the situation they were in there. I would actually, grade those as like positive reps. So like, as it comes with most things, process over results. That's why like when I say like people talk about saying sacks don't matter or whatever. People are not saying sacks don't matter from like a team perspective. Like if you're thinking about the Dolphins, yeah, you want as many sacks as possible. But when it comes to grading specific players, like when it comes to evaluating players, sacks can be very misleading. Like a guy with a bunch more sacks doesn't necessarily mean they were the better player. That's why you got to watch film, because sacks can be like, oh, this guy has a bunch of sacks, but they were sacks 5 seconds into play. They were hustle sacks, which are good, but they're not as impressive as like a player getting a pressure in a second and a half, that type of thing from like a really nice win. Like that type of play translates to more future success. That's why I think some people get confused when like the whole like pressure first sacks combo as well. It all kind of plays into it. Lack of context missing. Arnaldo Boo. What? Is there someone? Oh, Arnaldo said something. I was like, what are you talking about? Oh, scrolling Twitter and seeing the Jalen Waddle highlights. Good times. Should I read some comments on this? He's literally the most overrated receiver in the league with a great marketing dance. Wow. um, we actually do want to read some of these comments. I want to kind of go to, no, it's in the YouTube video, I think. You guys should see some of these comments. It's crazy. This is where I'm like, okay, man, what's the point? Why am I even reading this stuff? No. Editor comments. Okay. I got a comment on my Jalen Waddle video saying Jakeem Grant can do that. It's like, what? Like, it's fine to think maybe Waddle's not as like you can think different things, but like some of these are just mind blowing. Well, people are arguing in these comments. I've gotten multiple comments saying I couldn't find it right here, but them saying Waddle isn't fast or quick. I'm like, what? Ryder, what would be your best trade down option for the Dolphins? Think Ioane, Avion Terrell, Loma. I think Ioane would be one of my favorite trade down options for sure. Let me look at like a list of names and I can say some of my favorite potential trade down options. But yeah, let's go here. So I've got this list. Let's say. So if they do trade down, I do think. Also, there's some names at 11 that I think could still be there if they do trade down a little bit. Like the corners, like I wouldn't be surprised like if McCoy was like I would still feel so much better about taking like McCoy in a trade down situation. But yeah, Avion Terrell I think would be interesting, but probably would still be a bit early. The problem is in a trade down, you're taking a little bit more risky picks. That's why I'm not like as high on a trade down maybe this year and years past. Because that's when you would have to start considering guys like TJ Parker, the Clemson edge, who's a bit of a risky pick. Maybe Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. Do you think he could play right tackle for you? Honestly, you know who becomes one of my favorite options if they trade down to like 18, 19, 20? And we've talked about him in the second round a lot. Dylan Thieneman. I would take Dylan Thieneman at that point. Because I think he's going to go in that range. I think he's off. I think he's kind of becoming off the table. The more and more I hear people talk about Dylan Thieneman, I would take Dylan in a trade down. Because I would rather take him over some of the guys that I think aren't that good. Do we re-sign Devon? I think we do. I think they should. I think they can easily re-sign those guys, though, if you just look at the 2027 situation. Is Chop going to be decent next season? I've talked about it. I think Chop is on the arc that I've seen many Dolphins players go on an arc recently of year one, they're quite good. Year two, they struggle a lot. And then year three, they bounce back. And they're not quite as good as maybe their year one form, but they're still pretty good. That's my guess of what happens with Chop. Hopefully he gets the opportunities to prove that. But if he doesn't get those opportunities, then it won't even matter. But I think he's going to have to get those opportunities if you just look at the room. And I think Halfley, based on what he did in Green Bay, should at least have an idea of how to use him. You see Chase, the guard from Aggies, moving up into the first round, or is he mainly mids? It wouldn't surprise me if he went first. But I think he's probably he's probably a day two. Thieneman and McNeil Warren. Honestly, both are on the table if you do a trade down. I am a Thieneman guy a little bit more so, but I love both. They're probably my second and third safeties. But yeah. That's sort of where I'm at. I mean, I love the safety class. I think the safety class is really good. So like, even though say we missed out on Caleb Downs, we missed out on Thieneman, we missed out on McNeil Warren, I'm going to be a little disappointed because those are some of my guys. But there's some like safeties like day three, I think you can find some starters. Like last year, Xavier Watts fell to the third round, and Xavier Watts was easily one of the better safeties in that class. And there's a lot of guys that I like could see falling into like the fourth, fifth round that I think could be potential year one impact guys. Across the board. Depends on what you're looking for, what type of flavor. There's a lot of different types of safeties. Why would a GM want better process over like actual disruption? Well, that's the thing is the better process is actual disruption. That's what leads to like actual disruption. Just because they don't disrupt a play, like a say there's a specific play they don't disrupt because the ball is out fast, that has nothing to do with them. No one else would have disrupted the play, right? So like that's why like if the process is good, you're going to get that actual disruption on a more consistent basis than say the other guy that maybe has the better stats because of a cleanup sack. It's like that one year with Cameron Wake and Olivier Vernon where people thought Vernon was playing quite well because he had double-digit sacks, but if you really watch the film, Wake was the one creating actual disruption. Vernon was just cleaning up, which just happens sometimes. But yeah, to me, the better process is what is actual disruption. How do you feel about Blake Miller versus Ian Acker in the second? Well, I think both might go in the first, to be honest. I feel like Ian Acker is very likely to go in the first. Blake Miller could be there in the second, but those are two of my favorite right tackle prospects, so I like both. What about Mesador? Well, I talked about Mesador at the beginning of the stream. He would be a huge outlier, like a huge outlier, like with his age, if picked in the first round, like a huge one. And for me, like I don't mind taking outliers, but he's just when it comes to age, he's just rather someone I would let someone else take a chance. I think he'll be solid, but I'm really just not on that page when it comes to taking Mesador that early. Why are we trading Fitzpatrick? Fitzpatrick's one of the vets I would be down to keep, but if you do get like a mid-round pick for him, it's for cap reasonings, and they just don't think he's going to be like a long-term piece for you. That's sort of my guess. Late first Mesador? Yeah, no thanks. I don't even think I'd take him at 43, to be honest. He's a good player. I'm looking for something different, though. I haven't watched enough of the Northwestern kid. I think I watched like one game. What are your feelings on Malik Muhammad? He's a dog. I like dogs at corner. My notes are pretty much just he's a dog. Pretty sure. Yeah, and he's also younger. He's 21. He's quick twitch. Really good short area athlete. Very physical. Sort of like your scrappy player. Disruptive. Yeah, I like Malik Muhammad. He definitely fits my type of player. I'm not sure where he'll go. My guess is in that middle-ish round range. You think Jonah can be like a Patrick Paul development from year two? I doubt it. Paul showed more in year one. Like you could just see the potential with Paul more year one from like just a physical perspective. Jonah has like Paul's main work was technique, and he improved his technique a lot. And Jonah definitely has some technique issues, but I think his problems go even farther than technique. I don't know. I would be happy if Jonah just ended up being average at this point. Like I would take that all day long. Should Dolphins go cornerback, safety, wide receiver, edge at 11? I'm a big best player available guy. So if the best player available is a safety, which it would be Caleb Downs if he was there, I would take safety. Now, if all those positions are equal, say like you have the guys rated very closely at all those positions, like in any class, like I'm not even saying specific players, but like say all those are rated very closely, then I would take the most valuable position and the biggest need, which I think would be edge. But I don't think that's going to be the case in this class. At least not for me. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins took it. Single high rover or a pure box? Yeah, single high is like Genesis Smith out of Arizona. Not a great tackler. He'll try to tackle you, but he'll probably miss. But he's like one of the single high rovers, very athletic on the back end. Then like box safeties. I think like Emmanuel McNeil Warren is gonna be like that box safety, like big nickel type. If you want and like a third safety, I think Thienemann's a guy that can do a bit of both. I think Downs is a guy that actually is more of a box nickel type of player. Halsey is someone who can do both. Halsey kind of has the build of like a box safety, but he's actually played more single high at LSU. Bud Clark is kind of like that single high guy. VJ Payne out of Kansas State, he's going to be like a bigger nickel type, I think. Yeah, there's a bunch of different flavors in this class. Husky out of Maryland is someone who can do a bit of both. I don't know, man. I usually think I can be pretty optimistic about players, but man, that the Jonah film is bad. Maybe he gets better at right guard. Maybe that's the problem. It could be. That's it's a very possible scenario, but it was really bad. And like considering the Dolphins scheme, which makes it so easy to play offensive line and pass pro. Like look at Patrick Paul and Larry Borum and Aaron Brewer's numbers. If you look at like those numbers I showed on last stream, where like those guys were like some of the top in like lowest pressure rate. Like Patrick Paul was, where was he? Like Borum was 6 for right tackles, only a 3.71% at like pressure rate, which is very low. And like we know Larry Borum. You saw what happened in a normal scheme. He was one of the worst tackles in the league. Patrick Paul, super low pressure rate. He was 4th for left tackles. Brewer was like top 5. I can't remember what he was, but for centers. Jonah's had some of the worst pass pro tape in the league, and they made things as easy as possible for those guards. Cole Strange was also like that. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Do we tank for Arch Manning? They're not gonna be actually tanking. Can you break down what a rover is, please? Well, I'm not sure what he is implying, because he said single high rover, but that's not exactly what I would consider a rover. Because it's kind of, because rovers are more of like hybrid players, in my opinion. Like a guy who can play as almost like a mix of safety. Like a rover in this class would be like Thienemann, who can play safety, then can come down, play in the box, and also play some nickel. Like Caleb Downs is a rover. Emmanuel McNeil Warren would be like a rover. Like those guys who can basically kind of play all around the field, multiple different spots. Hybrid type of defender. What freshman do you like? Well, freshmen wouldn't be draft eligible unless they were red shirts. But I haven't watched enough freshmen. Usually, I'm only watching like draft eligible guys. Emin Worry, yes, Emin Worry is a rover type, because he's actually, I mean, he's more of just a big nickel. Like he plays everywhere for them, but he is at his best as like a big nickel. But having a safety that plays big nickel, like he would be considered that type. Yeah, like that's what McNeil Warren would do. Guys like that. Like I think Caleb Downs. If you get Caleb Downs, like he should be playing a lot of nickel. Would help him be impactful. Minka's a rover. He can play everywhere. Do you think Austin Jackson stays for one more year? Truly, no idea. It's a 50-50 in my mind. My guess is they're probably trying to trade him, but he doesn't have much. Because technically, and also Bradley Chubb hasn't been officially announced as released, so I wonder if they're still trying to trade him, or they're just going to make him a June 1st post cut, which I think is the more likely outcome. My question is, how did he fall off so badly going from college to the pros? I mean, most of us were banging the table for Jonah on draft night. I don't know. Sometimes it can just be a mental thing. I mean, there was definitely some concerns on his college tape. Like I was not a fan of trading up for him. I definitely made that clear, but I definitely thought he would have year one struggles, but I did not think it would be as bad as it was. So, might have been a mental issue. Could be just switching sides. He definitely didn't hold up to physicality as well as I would have liked either. I'm going to defend Jodo a little bit. There was times last year that he would have to cover for Brewer sometimes. Personally, I don't agree with that. I think people think Brewer was getting overpowered a bunch because he's small, but I watched the film and like that barely, like that was not happening. It happens sometimes, but not any times like out of the ordinary for most centers. You know, I don't know. Typically, they were more so making up for Jonah than Jonah making up for them. Is Tyler Dotson good? I mean, I'm down to draft a linebacker at any round, to be honest. I would love to replace Tyler Dotson. How about that? What round grade would you give QB Green? Like, if I had to grade him, like, pretty late, 5, 6, 7, and I would be like, he's a day 3 quarterback. Yeah, edge is more impactful, I think, than corners, but also good corner play can actually help out a lot of edges too. It kind of goes hand in hand. Where would you place Ewers in this QB class? Probably pretty high. Um, he'd be probably. I mean, he'd be top 5 for sure, especially for like the Dolphins, because I think Ewers was a guy that's like specifically a Shanahan scheme fit type of guy. Like, it depends if you're just doing it like overall, like in general. But if you're thinking specifically the Dolphins, you're probably gonna have guys like Ty Simpson higher for them than other teams because Simpson's a Shanahan scheme fit guy, and there's certain other guys like that in the class as well. I love Sonny Styles. Hmm. What the heck? Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm probably about to end it. But yeah. Would you consider trading Jordan Brooks for a second or 2/3 considering his age and timeline of the rebuild? Uh, I would consider it, but I would probably say no. Just because I still think he's young enough to make an impact. I actually think he's become one of the leaders of the team. Uh, and I do think if you do it correctly, you can turn it around in like 2 years. Like, that's a possibility. Will they actually do that? Who knows? Um, so he's probably one of the players I would keep, unless you got like blown away. Do you think we get QB from Georgia next year? Who's the Georgia quarterback? Do they have a new QB coming in? Can you tell me if I know? He's definitely at his best pass rushing as a 3 tech, more so than wider alignments or as a 1 tech. But that's where D tackles are typically. Pretty much every D tackle, you have better pass rush like opportunities as a 3 tech. Position groups are the strongest. Yeah, I would say safety is one of the stronger groups. I think Linebacker and corner is pretty strong. I actually don't think edge. I think edge is not super strong at the top, but it's pretty deep. Offensive tackle and defensive tackle are not the strongest. Interior guard's pretty good. Tight end's okay. Receiver's quite good. Running back is not good. And then quarterback is not good. Yeah. That'll probably be it. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time.